You're now tuned into Radical Radio with Coach L.
Switch my attitude. I'm so radical. Switch my attitude. I'm so radical. Switch my attitude. I'm so radical. Switch my attitude. I'm so radical.
Just to build my family out and to buy a family house. A lot of people only talking, put your money where your mouth is. Some memories don't fade, sometimes you miss the old days, but nothing changed unless you change what's around you, how you think, how you live, how you speak, how you walk, how you blink, how you talk, how you teach, how you reach, let it sink. What's your purpose? What's your passion? Did it pain? What's your plan? Is it plain? On a plane? How's your plane? I'm just playing. What's your purpose? What's your passion? Did it pain? What's your plan? Is it plain? On a plane? How's your plane? I'm just playing.
What's good, everybody? What's good? What's good? This is your girl, Coach L. You are tuned in to Radical Radio.
What's happening? It's 8 p.m. Let's get it. Radical Radio time. Radical Radio time.
It is Radical Radio time for sure. Thank y'all for joining us. Hey, we got a good show coming up. We have candidate for Lake County State's Attorney Eric Rhinehart that is going to come in the building. He'll be here in around 8:15. As you guys know, we always start the show off just, kind of talking about what we've been doing, what we've been up to. For those of you that follow me on Facebook, I did put a post up. I believe I put a post up yesterday. And I was just basically saying that, forgiveness is something that it's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
It's difficult to forgive, when somebody has hurt you.
Oh, yeah.
But it's actually something that you must do. It's a necessary tool for your growth. Because if you do not forgive, there's no way for you to grow. Because you want people to forgive you. When you make a mistake, you want people to forgive you. So in order for you to be forgiven, you have to forgive others.
Right.
So, it's just a little lesson, that I had to go through some things. And another thing, a lot of times we always want to talk about how people hurt us or what people do to us or, how things may be unfair. But at the same time, as I was thinking about a situation, I was saying to myself, it's easy for me to point the blame at somebody else and blame them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to take, it's a power when you know that you could have not made a choice. Like I made a choice to do something. So it's not like I could say it's their fault. You know what I'm saying? Because
right.
I still had a choice on whether or not I was going to deal with them, do what I was going to do or what have you. So a lot of times we don't hold ourselves accountable like that.
That's being self-aware right there. Like to take accountability of your part in anything that happens to you.
Yes.
It's way easier said than done, but you definitely got a point, Coach.
And it is like I tell, like, look, when I talk about respond versus react, like I literally got in my feelings about a situation, but I had to ask, like I had to ask God, like, what are you trying to teach me here?
Right.
What are you trying to teach me here? And the lesson that he was trying to teach me is you got to stop putting other people's needs and wants in front of your own. Because when you put other people's needs and wants in front of your own, and then it doesn't work out the way you intended it to work out, or something goes wrong, you automatically like trying to blame that person. But at the same time, you put them ahead of yourself. So y'all, I'm telling y'all,
that's real.
The lessons.
No, that's a tough one. Like, I mean, I feel like a lot of people get hung up on that. Like, I think we all struggle with just having to admit when, we made a bad judgment call and then we got to live with the consequences.
That part.
So,
and it's a time out. Like right now, it's time for us to really take inventory of ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Anything that you don't like about somebody else, you can change something about it within yourself.
Right.
Right? Like, in order for us to be able to deal with circumstances, we got to learn how to change things within ourselves. I say that all the time because I learned a lot of lessons along the way. It's a lot of things that I did that weren't right, but then I had to look at it and say to myself, like, I was kind of bogus with that, you know what I'm saying? Or I could have did better with that, you know what I'm saying? It's just all holding your own self accountable and understanding that you made a choice in a lot of the situations that you go through. There's a choice that was made.
Yeah.
So if it goes wrong, you made a choice
Yeah.
to
At
put
some
yourself
point,
in that position.
at some
Yep.
point, yeah, you decided to say, you know, hey, all right, I'm gonna step out on whatever and risk this, and whatever happens, like that's what I kind of do with my process, as far as like holding myself accountable. Like if like on the back end something don't work out the way I wanted it to, or you know, like the way
Mhm.
I envisioned it, and it had something to do with anybody else, I'll automatically tell myself like, you had to accept whatever was going to happen when you decided to just step out and do what you was going to do. So like
That's
if
right.
what you get back ain't what you wanted necessarily, is not directly somebody else's fault. You know what I'm saying? You just
Right.
got to understand that that's what happens when you try something and you don't succeed. You know what I mean? And all you can do at that point is evaluate your situation, regroup, and if it's worth trying again, try again, hopefully in a different way. You know what I mean? But not just give up and like walk away unless you feel like there's nothing left that you can, you know what I mean, at that point. So
Facts. Yep. Thank you guys for joining us. So Lotion, what you do over the weekend, bro? What you been up to? What's been going on?
I've been chilling. I've been really just in the lab, I guess you could say, still just trying to work on Lotion. Like I still got my gym clothes on now. I just walked out of there. I'm feeling it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've just been, you know, this time of the year, I really do kind of seclude myself. It's weird, but I really go in the grind mode around now. And I'm just kind of there. You know what I mean? Like trying to improve Lotion and try to be the
Yep.
best that I can be for me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's one of those times where I kind of turn that switch a little bit as far as like what you were just saying, you know, putting other people in front of yourself. Like I really put myself first around this time of the year and really just try to hone in on like where I can stretch and improve myself and kind of like don't really regret it. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like
Yeah.
I ain't never regretted working on myself a day in my life. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
despite what somebody else might feel, or like if I'm lacking in the area that has to do with somebody else, like they got to just deal with that right now. Cause like I'm in the lab, I'm working on me. You know what I mean?
Facts.
And I just been, you know, on that, like whatever I feel like I can improve, I've just been working on it, man. Like mentally, physically, spiritually, all the
All
above.
that.
All
That's
that good
good. That's
stuff.
dope. This is the time. You
This is
know,
where a lot of
about
people
to get
lose focus. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where I feel like it's important for me to kind of be a little bit more selfish around this time, because this is definitely where people start to waver a lot because of
oh
all
yeah,
the stuff
this the
going.
fourth quarter.
Yeah, all the stuff going on around you. You kind of start to lose focus and sight of where you going, and like I just don't want that to happen. And on top of that, I got goals that I want to reach. So,
There
you
you
know,
go.
but I ain't been up to too much, just chilling. You know,
That's
chilling.
good. Now I did get a chance. Yesterday I was able to attend the prayer vigil for Marcellus Sinet and Tafara Williams.
Right.
Shout out to Lake County. Shout out to the community stepping up and being there and just willing to come out and step up and be there as a support system. It was amazing. It was a great time. I want to lend my prayers out to both the Johnson and the Sinet family. All the community leaders that are stepping up, that are really stepping up and speaking out. Hey, it's
Yeah.
something that we have been faced with, but I feel like this is one thing that we can do as a community is we can come together. We can come together and unite at a time that's this is not a good time, but it's time for us to unite. It was very unfortunate and tragic, but it is definitely a time for us to come together as a community and unite as one. So prayers to both families that were affected. So we have Eric Rhinehart, who is here. He is the candidate for Lake County State's Attorney. This guy has been everywhere. When I tell y'all, when you look up, Eric is gonna be there. He been everywhere, and he been beating the pavement for a long time right now. Like we
Right.
seen him way back in the summertime, we were able to, meet him and really talk to him and hear his perspective on a lot of things. And I have to tell you, I was extremely impressed. The reason why I wanted to bring him on the show, I was extremely impressed with his transparency, with his honesty, and with his openness and willingness, just to be present. A lot of times you don't see politicians, just being present.
Yeah.
But he has been present in a lot of different ways. And Eric, I want to commend you for that, just being present and stepping up. I definitely appreciate seeing you. I love seeing you when you're out in the community. And I love the fact that I can say something like, he be everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So that's the dopest thing about you, that I have experienced since I met you. So I appreciate that. And I thank you for coming on Radical Radio.
Absolutely. I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
We can hear you good.
All right, great. Absolutely. So I'm thrilled to be here. It's a very serious time, both for our Lake County community and in our country. So I'm excited to be here in the sense that we have important things to talk about and important questions to answer. And I think that what you just said about coming together as a community to fix these problems is what we have to do. And it's like anything else in work or school or my campaign. We also have to think ahead, and we have to think about how did we get here? Why are we here? And how do we change some things? So I'm thrilled to answer questions and talk about the plans that I have and to talk about anything from what's been going on in the last few days to what's been going on for the last few years that I believe has led to some of these issues.
Gotcha. We appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into it. First things first, I just want you to tell the people about Eric Rhinehart, not the candidate, but just the person. Just, who is Eric Rhinehart? Why is Eric Rhinehart deciding that it's time for him to run for state's attorney?
Yeah. So, I live in Highwood with my two boys, Sam and Teddy, and my wife, Stephanie. We love it. We love it here. And Highwood is a great, diverse community. If anybody has not been to Highwood, and I know it's a little bit of a smaller town, if anybody has not been to Highwood, it's not some development within Highland Park or anything like that. It's its own town with its own great scene. So come to Highwood, particularly when the pandemic ends and we can all hang out at a lot of great places in Highwood. But we love Highwood, and I've been in Lake County for 17 years. In the courts, coming to court every day. I've got a few cases in McHenry, but that's it. I mean, every day. A lot of lawyers go to different courthouses, and that's good. And some of the things that I've seen in other courthouses, I want to bring to Lake County. But for the most part, I'm in Lake County every day. And I started went to the University of Chicago Law School. Worked for 2 years in downtown Chicago, which gave me a lot of great perspectives about attention to detail and what civil practice is like, and going to work every day in a really intense environment that demanded excellent lawyers. And that's something I want to bring to this job because it's so important. The stakes are so high. We have to have great lawyering. And after a couple of years at the law firm, though, as much as I enjoyed the great lawyering, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be in the courtrooms, and I wanted to be helping people. And so I went to the Lake County Public Defender's Office. Not a lot of people go from prestigious law firms to public defender's office, but it was the best decision. It was the best decision I've ever made professionally. And so I love that work, fighting for people in the courtrooms. And after a few years of that, I decided that I wanted to have my own practice. And so with my great partner, Kevin Malia, who's an unbelievable lawyer and a great friend, he and I started our own practice. I'm still a public defender in the sense that our firm handles some cases for the county on a public defender basis, and very proud of that, and very proud of all the work that our firm does to help people above and beyond getting paid, frankly. And so, I've watched this prosecutor's office, I've watched these judges, I've watched this legal culture make a lot of mistakes for 17 years for a lot of reasons. And I want to change that. I've never run for office before. I've never been in politics before. I've always been interested in it, just like I'm sure we all are, just watching our communities. But I wanted to make a change, and I think I have a lot of unique perspectives. I think I have a lot of creative and also common sense solutions that I hope will solve a lot of problems and a lot of perspectives that prior state's attorneys have not had, whether it's just my entire legal career, whether it's doing so much work in criminal defense, whether it's advocating for the causes I believed in. I think I can bring some new perspectives that we desperately need right now in Lake County and really in this country as a broader movement towards being more fair to people.
That is amazing. Thank you for that, Eric. Now, I know that with October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I know you speak a lot on domestic violence. As a survivor of domestic violence, I feel like a lot of times the judicial system does not protect a lot of the victims. Tell me what you look to change when it comes to domestic violence.
Yeah, it's a really big part. It's a really big part of my campaign. I've talked about it a lot on Facebook, and as you said, and just whenever I'm speaking to different groups, the state's attorney's office has never, for as long as I've been there, come up with any innovative ways to end the domestic violence cycle. It's an epidemic in Lake County. It skyrocketed during COVID-19,
right?
And that was a time when I didn't hear anything from anyone in the court systems about this. I would see there's some great non-for-profits, and some of which I've worked for pro bono, that were talking about this. Okay, I'm talking about the courthouse. I'm talking about the state's attorney's office. That should have been a time when there was even more awareness and more education about the cycles of domestic violence. So we have to be more willing to talk about all of this in public. Two, I want to have a victims advisory panel, a survivors advisory panel, for anyone who's been involved or had a loved one involved or hurt by domestic violence. There's no such advisory panel now, and they need to, that advisory panel, and some of it will be private because there'll be emotional parts of it, but we should also be public about what we're doing. We don't have to name names that are on it, but we certainly should name the initiatives that we're doing. So having an advisory panel, and we have to have more experienced prosecutors dealing with domestic violence. That's critical to me. It can't just be another step in the office. It's got to be its own thing, and it's got to have its own set of lawyers. It's got to have its own set of lawyers who are very experienced, because right now it's pretty young attorneys, and I think domestic violence cases are some of the most complicated cases. They're just more complicated. I'm sorry, they're just more complicated than when you find some drugs in a backpack in a car. I'm sorry, they aren't. But why is that prosecutor more experienced than the person who has to go talk to a survivor of domestic violence and deal with all of the complications of what's going on with them as a person?
Right.
But the more experienced prosecutors are handling the drugs in the backpack. Okay, and so that's never made any sense to me. So we have to make sure that we're putting enough resources into it. We have to make more connections with the fantastic non-for-profits that we have in Lake County. We have to have more educational programs, and we have to have more forums where we're talking about domestic violence in all communities,
right?
Communities of color, all communities, underserved communities. It's as we all know, it's domestic violence cuts across all races and all socioeconomic groups, and so that's what I want the Victims Advisory Panel to be focused on.
That's amazing, because I was just on a panel of survivors, and that's exactly what they were saying that they need. We need lawyers that are assigned to domestic violence cases, that are familiar with domestic violence. And I made one of my things, they said, if you could change anything about the judicial system regarding domestic violence, what would you change? And I said that I would like to see a domestic violence, you know how they have like a what is it called? Sex, like like people that have
registered.
Yeah,
registry. Yeah.
I was saying, like, they should have a domestic violence registry, because it happens so often. Why not have a registry for domestic violence offenders? Because that may stop them, and be just as diligent as they are with the sex registry, be diligent with a domestic violence registry. Maybe it'll stop them from thinking about doing it over and over and over again. So that was just.
I think that's a very interesting idea, and I think that the other problem I have is that in the courtrooms, it's just so mechanical for so many people, and that frankly that's true in all cases, in my opinion. but it's particularly painful to see in domestic violence, right? Like DUI courtrooms have become automatic, traffic court has become automatic, felony drugs have become automatic, and that's a broader problem to talk about. But I think the problem is particularly sad and damaging in domestic violence courtrooms, and so we've got to stop that. We have to stop the crush of the caseloads, right? Like, I'm sorry, we're in the government. We have limited money. We have limited resources. We have to acknowledge that some cases are going to require more focus than others. And I think violent crimes and domestic violence need to have a lot more focus. And you're going to have to make decisions about how to deal with some other cases. So you put more prosecutors dealing with domestic violence and violent crimes because they're so complicated. And another idea, and I'm curious what you think about this, because I haven't really heard any feedback yet. And if people don't like this, and that's cool.
Okay.
One idea I had was, I actually think we got to take some pressure off of the survivors of domestic violence by always having to come to the courthouse and always having to come meet with the prosecutors. I think the prosecutors should go out and meet with them in their homes and meet with them at their places of work and their schools. You've been victimized
enough.
You've been victimized enough. Why do you got to drive from Round Lake? Why do you got to drive from Round Lake to the courthouse when you got to go to school and keep a job? So I think we got to get the prosecutors out and not be afraid to do that.
That's a great thing, Eric, because of the simple fact that they don't realize like that ride. I don't care if it's a 5-minute ride. There's anxiety all through that ride while you have to go into the courthouse and you have to, speak about your experience yet again, or give details of your experience once again. Just on this show, Nick can attest, when you share your story and it has anything to do with domestic violence, there's like a backlash that you go through. There's like a PTSD of sorts that you go through after rehashing that experience. So yeah, I think that would be a great idea to have, the prosecutors go out to the homes. I think that would be a great idea. Rita Norman says her family thanks you for everything that you have done. The producer of this show actually was represented by you and speaks very, very highly of the representation that she got. So that is my family. So we do thank you for that.
Good. Well, thank you.
Don Johnson said, hey there, thanks for providing the platform with opportunity for the community to hear from Eric Rhinehart, a down-to-earth person that has Lake County community best interest with humanity, with dignity and respect. That's what's up, Don. Thank you for that. So Eric, they speaking highly of you.
Yeah.
So Nick got some questions he's finna throw at you. So let's go, Nick.
Thank you. And I appreciate you coming on our show tonight and, sitting with us and just talking to us. It definitely shows, and knowing that previously you have shown up, and I know that you are very active as far as getting involved in the community and showing your face, and like that takes a lot. So I definitely want to say thank you first and foremost for that, because as somebody that's running for state's attorney personally, I've never seen or met or spoken to somebody in that position. So that alone speaks volumes to me. Personally, I do not have much faith in the voting system, and that's just how I feel, based on the fact that we still are fighting some of the same stuff that we, as Black people, have been fighting for the past 50, 60 years. You know what I mean? We fought for our right to be able to vote. We won that fight, and we're still in 2020 dealing with, things that are just ridiculous. Like we could put a video out right now of some stuff that everybody would agree was unfair, unjust, as far as the inhumane treatment of people of color by people in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And honestly, just for me, it leaves a really bitter taste in my mouth, because we vote every 4 years, right? And most of the time you see, for that election year, a lot of campaigning, a lot of people's names being thrown out there, and then I'm not really 100% sure what happens post-election with that. So I kind of want to stay focused on that part of the conversation. And I just want to ask you a couple questions, just to see how you feel about it, man.
Yeah.
So as far as like, you say that you want to do these things, you know what I'm saying? In your campaign, you campaigning for things like what Coach L was just speaking about, you know, like having a registry, or, you know, having prosecutors be able to go to the victims instead of them having, which are great ideas. And I like, you know what I'm saying, what you're saying with that. But how do you, like, I know the process isn't that simple, you know what I mean, for things to just change or things to be pushed like that. And I know it takes time. So as far as you're concerned, like, how do we know that you're going to do these things that you're saying that if we vote for you, you're going to go change this?
All right. So love that question. And what I'm about to say, I say with all humility, because I'm not in the office yet. So I'm really talking generally. What I'm about to say is general to states' attorneys. I don't want anybody to hear, oh, that guy thinks he's going to be president of Lake County. Okay.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. But there's a couple things that are very unique about the state's attorney's office.
Okay.
First, we watch mayors, I think, and I'm not picking on any specific mayor. Okay, honest. We watch mayors have to be kind of like the president, right, with checks and balances. Okay, the president can do a lot, but then Congress is going to hurt him, or the courts are going to hold him back, whatever.
Right.
The mayors have that same issue, right? They have a city council, they have a budget, and certainly the state's attorney's office has a budget, but that's not quite what the state's attorney has to deal with. The state's attorney is in charge of the entire office and can hire and fire the lawyers at will.
Right.
There's not a difficult process to do that. And so unlike a mayor or the president of a school board or a state representative who says, well, I got to go work with all these other people and we all have to be patient. And I'm not ripping on those people, because that's all true. They got to go work with a lot more people.
Right.
The state's attorney has to work with a lot of people, and they have to work with judges. But if I say that prosecutors are going to meet with victims, survivors of domestic violence, they are going to do it or lose their job. It's not, I don't have to pass that by a council. I don't have to fund that. If I say that if you think it's a bad police stop, you can dismiss the case early in the case rather than waiting to see if the person gets a lawyer or they, oh, hey, let's see how far we can go on this case. And maybe they'll wear down and miss work twice. If you think it's a bad police stop, then you do it right away. Those types of things, I'm not going to have to negotiate with anybody else. So I think that's kind of something that not a lot of people realize, because mostly what are we voting on? We're voting on mayors, city council, state reps. That means state senate, right? We're either sending people to Springfield, we're sending people to Washington, or we're, electing mayors. And those people work very hard. And none of this is a criticism of them, but it's really important to realize that the state's attorney. So for example, I have said that I will get rid of the prosecutors who prosecuted innocent men.
Right.
Juan Rivera, Jerry Hobbs, James Edwards were all prosecuted wrongfully. And at least Rivera and Hobbs were going to be executed. And I kind of forgot, I'll be honest, I kind of forgotten that. I was in the public defender's office in 2005 when Hobbs came through. But prior to this campaign, I kind of forgotten that they had gone for the death penalty. Mm-hmm. Here's my point. I could talk about that for an hour. There's not going to be like a complicated, process about determining what prosecutors were involved with those cases and saying they have the wrong values for this office. So if you listen to what I say, I'm humble. I'm a humble person, but I'm also, most of the things I say are things that will be able to be done by me. Now, when I say we're going to fight racial profiling, I know that's a long process. Yeah. But when I say, just to use the one we just used, we're going to have prosecutors meet with the survivors of domestic violence in their homes and schools and businesses, that's a policy that I can implement on day one. And there's lots of those things. And as we go, we can talk about things that will take time and not take time. And I certainly appreciate you saying, look, I'm disillusioned with voting. And I hear that all the time. And I think that I urge everybody to think about voting and to vote and to study the issues. And even if people aren't perfect, even if you're not happy with some things,
right.
The other side, I don't want to be too partisan. The other side is voting.
Right. Of course.
The other side, there's a lot of people who they might be disillusioned and they might be frustrated on the other side of the spectrum, but they're coming to vote.
Right.
And that's just, that's that's why I want everybody to vote. That's why I want everybody to vote that I run into.
No, I completely understand that. I totally get
fair.
that. It makes perfect sense.
Yep.
So as far as adding or changing things that are written into the law, like because like I said, I feel like the work is like the election is leading up to it, and then the work has to be done post-election, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that can't be the last time that we're sitting down or that we're, I don't know, making decisions, right? So what does the process look like post-election for us to push for these things that we want to see change in our community?
Absolutely. So first of all, the current state's attorney does not have open community forums or open community panels. I'm gonna do that right away. You can hold me to that. That's a campaign promise. Again, that's something I can do right away. There's, he has he ran and he said he was gonna have citizen panels, but then none of that was an open process. I don't know when those meetings were. One of my supporters made a FOIA request, and they said they wouldn't, give that person the names of the members of the citizens panel.
Right.
Eventually they did because it started to become a political issue. But that kind of nonsense, we got to cut that nonsense
out. Right. That's exactly kind of what I'm speaking.
Yeah, we're working for the people. Okay. And so we also, and I know it's kind of weird here because, the issues are so important, the stakes are so high. We actually need statistics to be published so that we can identify these problems. And so I'm going to make another promise that everyone can hold me to. There are going to be statistics about racial profiling and how cases are resolved on my website, okay? I don't think I should have to go diving through different studies to find out what the crime trends are in Lake County. And the real studies are 18 months old.
Right.
So 18 months, that was an eternity in this country. 18 months ago, we hadn't heard of COVID, okay?
Right.
Why can't we have up-to-date statistics locally? Okay. Everybody says, oh, you got to go through Springfield, Washington. No, you don't. When I file a domestic violence case, when I file a domestic battery case, click, and it's like an Excel spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
So how many domestic violence cases have I filed? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that crime statistics are different because just because a case happen or a crime happens in the community doesn't mean that there's a filing in the courthouse. I totally get that. But you can identify crime trends. Okay, if there was a trend upwards in filings during the COVID quarantine, that should have been on the website.
Yeah.
What this campaign is not about statistics, but it is about accountability. And if we have statistics, then we can hold people accountable. And it's crazy. It's crazy to me that we do not live in a county where these statistics are the way that we hold people accountable.
That's a huge problem in my eyes.
Yes,
I feel like that's a huge problem.
Because then now we're arguing about it. So why do I have to have an argument? Why do I have to have an argument anymore with people about whether there's racial profiling in Lake County?
And it's obvious.
when we can look in the statistics? Because everybody loves to say, "Oh, that's just an anecdote. That's just a story. That's just a one-off." Not when we are keeping the statistics. The sheriff Heidelberg has the statistics on his jail site. And he's not responsible for what I'm about to say. The sheriff just keeps people in the jail. He doesn't decide who's going in. That's the judges and the state's attorney. 35% of our jail is African American. 7% of our population is African American. Okay,
exactly.
And so that Sheriff Heidelberg has that statistic up so that I can say things like I just said.
Right.
And now, granted, he isn't in any way responsible for that because he's just taking care of the people who are there and keeping everybody safe and doing his job. But the system that's right next to his jail has created that disparity. And we should have been talking about that every day of my career for the last 17 years. When I became a public defender after about a week, I knew what I kind of had intellectually thought, that I would be talking about race and criminal justice for the rest of my legal career.
Right.
Because it's so obvious, really, not just in Lake County, but everywhere.
That's exactly my point. It's so obvious that things aren't fair for, people of color. Like, and I'm just at the point where it's just like, man, I'm gonna do my best to try to stay out of the people's face in the court, not break the law, and you know what I mean? Just do my thing outside. But it's obvious that it's an issue, and I'm very happy to hear somebody finally say that coming from your end, and like, it just makes me. I mean, it does give me hope. You know what I mean? Because for so long, we haven't heard these things. And like you said, 17 years, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure that there's been multiple elections in that time.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I don't feel like anybody has had that perspective that you're sharing with us. So my last question on that topic is like, do you honestly feel, and you were a public defender, so I'm sure that you are on the front line. Do you feel that, you know, Black or people of color are treated unjustly in the eyes of the law?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Every experience I've had says that, and every statistic says that. It's my experience and it's statistics, and sometimes those can be in conflict. That's true in all of our lives. But yes, everything says that we have different results. That's why my ads say I'll fight racial profiling in the streets and unfair results in the courtroom, because, you know, you may start a case. It may be, you know, maybe a case should start one way and maybe somebody made a mistake. Maybe somebody is in the wrong. Okay. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the police. A lot of cases do start with the police. Right. Some cases are just coming into court. Okay. But then it's the results. Okay. So why are some people getting probation and paying high fines, but they're getting probation? Some people are going to jail and prison. So that by itself doesn't have anything to do with the police. Everybody wants to talk a lot about the police. Yeah. But don't forget, we're seeing unfair results in the courtroom with the results. So this is really important to me. And I really, you know, as you do a campaign, you talk so much, you think about different ways to say things. But it occurred to me the other day that I've heard my opponent talk about some different programs he has, and he makes it sound like they're these enormous programs and that they are, you know, represent the entire system, and they represent, the way he's done it, they represent a very small portion of the system. But then I thought how we know nothing about those programs. He loves to talk about a deferred prosecution program he set up. First of all, it's minuscule. Second, I don't know anything about the racial breakdown of that deferred prosecution. Right. Wouldn't you like to know who's getting deferred prosecution?
We would like some information, honestly. Yeah.
He talks about different programs, and many of which I'll keep. I'm not saying I'm going to tear down all of his programs, but I'm going to make them bigger, and I'm going to tell you how big a part of the pie are they. Okay. Yeah. I could talk for an hour about a program, and then somebody needs to ask me, "Hey, Eric, how many people are in that program?" Right. And I say, "Oh, well, it's 5 people." And you say, "Wait a minute, 5 people out of thousands? Okay, that's a nice program, but how big is it?" So I encourage anybody who's listening to me, if you see my opponent out there, ask him how big these programs are, because it's a very clever maneuver on his part to never talk about the size of any of it. So so you know, I believe in expanding treatment programs. I believe in studying why we have why we have unfair results and disparate results. But the first thing we have to do is we have to measure it. And that leads to implicit bias training. And we have to increase our implicit bias training. And it's one thing to line up a bunch of to put a bunch of assistant prosecutors in a room and have talks and show them videos. I'm sure that'll be a part of my program. But we're also going to measure our own statistics and say, wait a minute, why do we have I don't want to give any statistics I don't know, but why do we have unfair statistics where people of color are not getting probation as often as white people, et cetera, et cetera? So we're not just going to have theoretical speakers talking about how we get rid of implicit bias, which is part of this, but also why are we seeing this in Lake County? And so your question was, do I think this is happening? And again, I'm not trying to be negative about my opponent, but if you ever listen to him, he'll say, well, we have a lot of problems in this country. Right. He'll say we have a lot of racism in this country. He's right, but he's running for Lake County State's attorney. So the question is, does he think it's in this county? Of course it is. And it's another very subtle thing he says that is a way to defer the discussion about what's going on in our county. And so I believe it's true. The statistics show it's true. I'm not afraid to say it's true in our county so that we can fix our county instead of having broad discussions about what we need to do in our country, which we do. Right. It's just we need to focus at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, thank you so much.
I love that. Thank you, Eric. Now, I do want to talk a little bit, since we're in that realm, just talk about like any type of bail reform. I know that a lot of times I heard something at one of our events where, you know, one of our guests, they basically said, like, you know, when it comes to African Americans, a lot of times it's like you're holding African Americans for a ransom, because you can't call it a bail if it's, something that they can't reach. And that's a lot of the issue that comes into play. They have these high bails for these crimes, but they can't reach the bail. So what's your thought on that process?
Yeah. So I spoke at a forum. It feels like forever ago. It was before COVID. But I spoke at a live forum. Imagine that. I spoke at a live forum of about bail reform, and I support it. I support State Senator Peters and Justin Slaughter, Representative Justin Slaughter's Pretrial Fairness Act. My opponent's never said whether he supports these things or doesn't. He just doesn't say these. He doesn't say those types of things. He just doesn't level with people. So I support that act and the reforms that act is getting at. I support changing this, because nobody should be in jail. Nobody should be held in jail simply because they can't post bail. It should be because a judge and professionals have made a decision that somebody may be a threat to the community. I will also say I understand that decision process needs to be closely scrutinized, and we have to watch for implicit and explicit bias during that. So, look, judges and prosecutors have to make decisions about whether people should be in jail or out of jail while the case is pending. That's a hard and complicated decision, and I'm not here to say it's easy,
right?
But I don't understand what money has to do with it. And I'm going to give a real easy example.
Okay.
If you think in a domestic violence case, if you think that a guy who's charged with domestic violence is going to go back out into the community, okay, and hurt the survivor again, then make that decision about that person and figure out if they should be held prior to the trial.
Right.
When they just put a price tag on it, judges love to say $50,000, which means you need $5,000. So what the judge means by that is, well, if the person comes up with, this person isn't really going to come up with $5,000. That's
there you go.
Okay.
That's it.
What happens when their uncle gives them $5,000? Right? Now, They've got their freedom. I'm 100% for the presumption of innocence. And this is kind of this is a really complicated topic, right? Because I believe in the presumption of innocence. I advocate for my clients, but I also know that some people are going to be in jail while charges are pending. It's just putting the money tag on it is real weird to me, right? Because people are charged with murder. They get the enormous number, and the next thing you know is they put their house up. Okay. Yeah. But some people can't put their house up.
Yeah.
So what are we doing here? Yeah. And so I think we should make decisions about dangerousness. I just don't think it should come down to this money as being the thing the way we talk about it is money, as opposed to different systems. So many other states do have that type of system, and we could do that. And that's what I'm not just coming up with this. That's what the act calls for, that the senator and the representative have proposed, which is that we just talk about this like adults about what we want to do, rather than saying, well, this guy needs $5,000 to get out. That's a ton of money. But we also know that people can find $5,000. And what did we just accomplish,
Absolutely.
And then some people are held on $500 bail because the judge feels like it. It's like, what is the point of that? If somebody can't afford $500, are you saying they're dangerous or not dangerous? You just want to put a little price tag on it. And so what, now that person has to sit 2 days while somebody comes and gets the $500, but the judge didn't really think they were a danger because they wouldn't have made it $500.
Yeah.
So what's with the nominal bails?
Yeah.
That's never made sense to me. What's with the small bails? Oh, so we can get a little bit of money out. And it's like, no. That's not why people should be in jail. That's not what we should be talking about.
I appreciate that. I do. Now let's talk a little bit. I know you are very vocal about the current state's attorney, Mike Rhinehart, not answering certain questions. Like, he hasn't refuted the fact that he does not support the things that Trump is doing. Like, he hasn't been vocal about anything. And that seems to be what you say a lot when you're, on this campaign trail, that you just don't hear nothing from him. What is the difference? What are we going to see different when it comes to, if you were to win this election, the transparency and the fact that, when things happen in our community, like, let's talk about Rittenhouse and let's talk about, the Marcellus and Tafara Williams and things like that. Like what would you do different as far as speaking up and being transparent in these types of situations?
You know, with being a leader for law enforcement and being a leader in the community, I think that leads to a very unique responsibility about saying what you believe. And it leads to particularly important in these times. Trump is different. I'm sorry. Trump is he's different. Okay. In terms of talking about these things. And so I deeply, I think Trump is maybe, it's Trump. I think Trump is dangerous. I think Trump has hurt our country. And I think that there are things we have to talk about that Trump has caused that are separate from just the typical Democrat-Republican debate.
Right.
And my problem with Mike is that I read his Facebook too. He says, I want to talk about people and not party. And it's like, Mike, I'm not asking you to step away from your party. I'm not asking to make this a super Democrat versus Republican thing. I'm a Democrat. He's a Republican. I'm asking him what he thinks about Donald Trump. I'm asking him what he thinks about, I'm sorry, the most important person in our country right now, and whether he should be or shouldn't be, he is. And so my problem is, I have to know what you think about that. I have to know about what you think about how he interacts with women, the way he interacts with women in press conferences and his past and everything in his life. I want to know what you think about how he deals with people of color and the things he says. And so because those issues are part of our job, okay? And this isn't me attacking, this isn't me saying, well, a state's attorney should denounce a president messing up a foreign policy thing. Okay, this isn't like saying, well, hey, let's debate the Iraq War, and I think Mike Neerheim should have a position on the Iraq War. Okay, I mean, I probably do at the end of the day, but okay, that's not what we're talking about in the streets of our communities. Mm-hmm. But the things that Trump does when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to race, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the treatment of women, those things do matter in our lives. So this isn't me just picking on him about something overseas. This is what's going on in our home. Okay, that's about Trump. When it comes to these other things, I just think people got to answer questions and be okay with disagreements and not be pandering to parts of their party. Well, I can't say anything bad about Trump, or, oh, I can't do this or that. So I just think people have to be more open about it. People have to be okay with disagreements. We have to be less careful with, just crafting, press releases and things like that. Let's just talk about our views. Let's talk about where we disagree and agree. And, I think I'm going to have more press conferences instead of press releases, because a press conference means I'm answering questions rather than just crafting something. So, I think that's very important. I think that's very important that we're not backing away from questions. And he backed out of a debate with me. And I was in a little forum yesterday, and I'm not going to name the forum, but he was invited to that forum, and he knew I'd be there. And I'm seeing that more and more. We did a forum where we had to give recorded statements, and then everybody talks about it instead of us both being live. And when you're battling for people, when you're battling in a courtroom, you don't get to come in and just make all the rules. You gotta take life as it comes. Whether it's a crime that's happening late at night, or whether it's a police officer making a mistake, or whether having to walk into a courtroom, I think you got to deal with what's going on and not try to dictate terms to everybody.
That's good. Cecilia said, hi, Mom. She said he did talk about that program, but have not seen any results from those programs. She's talking about Mike Neerheim. And Teresa said, because the current state's attorney doesn't say much or speak to the public, it's an issue. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. One thing that, like you said, just being able to really talk about it and answer questions. When it comes to, right now we're in a very stressful, I would say, hurting situation in our own community right now. There's a young man, Marcellus, and a young lady, Tafara, that were Marcellus, is no longer with us, and Tafara has been in the hospital and had many surgeries. And it does make a difference. I will say it does make a huge difference when we don't see the current state's attorney step up and really dive into answering questions, not going around questions, and not really, being able to be there for the community to, answer those questions. Right now, there's just a lot going on. The police officer has been fired. But then what does it look like when we're saying we don't want them to just be fired? If the information is there, we want him to be arrested, things like that. Those are questions that we would have that right now we have nobody that really would tell us how that process is going to look. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there are not questions being answered. I think there's not questions. I think there's not a lot of answers about how we got here and why we got here. There's not a lot of answers about what's actually happening in this case, which I see as they're both parts of this, right? I think obviously the pain of, I've been out there. I was out there Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. There was no event on Friday, but I was out there Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I met with I met in those events. I met the families, and it's terrible. It's devastating. And, I know this reminds the Howell family of what happened to them in Zion. I know that this is a painful time for them, and I'm thinking about them too. Even though it was a few years ago, I'm sure it's all been ripped raw, right, by these events. And so I'm certainly thinking about all those families. And we have to have more answers, and we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here in terms of the policies in terms of police use of force, in terms of body camera policies, in terms of how quickly we can answer the public's questions. We also have to, we say that the Illinois, he says the Illinois State Police and the Department of Justice are going to investigate these things. Those all feel far off to me now, right? I don't even know where the Illinois State Police headquarters are if somebody wanted to walk in, and I think they're in Elgin or something, but what's the point of that? So where are those officers going to be sitting? It sounds like a small question, but are they going to get an office in our courthouse? That sounds cool, because now I know where the press can go find them. Or are they just going to be somewhere else in a government building off of a highway somewhere? That kind of matters though, right? Like it kind of matters where people are. And so I don't, I think there's a lot of questions about that. And it sounds kind of official, like, oh, it's the Illinois State Police and the Department of Justice. I'm not against other people coming in, but I'm also... I
don't know what that means. What does that mean?
It sounds like a lot of misdirection.
But how did we get to a point where we have to have somebody come in from the outside?
Right.
I get the claim that, we want to make sure that if we make this decision or that decision, we're not claiming to be biased, but we also know that just putting it off on somebody else is its own type of decision. And so, we all know that information flows here and there. And so between all of the bodies. So I just think there has to be accountability for whatever this decision is going to be. And there have to be answers. There have to be a lot more answers through press conferences and talking about really what this is. I'm sorry, we have to compare this to any other type of case where if something happens, the police and the prosecutors have to make fast decisions. They're not making fast decisions here. And I don't think there should be a rush to judgment, but there's not really an explanation as to why things are taking the time that they are. And that's my problem.
And it does lead to a lot of confusion within the community, a lot of anger within the community, a lot of unjust things, within the community for just, and it's like never ending. So that's the thing. When you have a community and you have something like this that happens, it hurts. It's a big wound, you want to be able to understand and overstand what this process is going to look like. What does this mean now that you're saying that the DOJ is here and all that? What does that mean for this case? Like, when is justice going to be served? How do we move to make sure that we're doing our part, to make sure that, as a community, we're going to know what's going on? That's the biggest thing. And I think that right now, Lake County is hurting in a way where we're tired, and this is something not only with, this situation, but, even being so close to Kenosha with that situation. And, the fact that, the young man, Kyle Rittenhouse, is in Lake County and, he's in, our juvenile center. Here's the thing, what I feel, and this is just my thought, this is just my opinion. Kyle Rittenhouse is sitting in, the juvenile center in Vernon Hills. Had it been, my 19-year-old son who was African American, I don't believe he'd be in the juvenile system. I believe he'd be right in Lake County Jail being charged as an adult. It's just that simple that things are just not just. And
that's because the reason you feel that way is because that's probably how it would have happened, because you've also been watching this happen in our community for decades.
For years.
And so it's not, everybody says, oh, well, everybody's trying to be fair. And it's like, but we're watching the last 20 years more, right? We're watching several, many years of unfairness. So why would it be fair now?
Exactly.
And I think that's why, that's why everybody says, well, let's I've heard people say, well, let's see let's give the officer the benefit of the doubt and see what happened. Well, people have been racially profiled for decades in our county. So is that part of this case? We don't know yet. We're not getting that answer. Does this officer have any prior incidents? We don't know. We don't have that answer yet. And so people say that, they're a good apple, that one bad apple spoils the barrel and is always comparing officers to apples. We got to be able to see inside the barrel. Okay. Right. The barrel needs to be glass all the way around so we can see what's inside and what's going on with these police cases. Because if there is other instances, and I have no idea, but we don't know any answers. We don't have any answers to that yet. And we have a lot of procedures in our legal system that doesn't let you see what's going on with officers past, and that's a big problem.
That's what I feel like is the huge, like, I feel like that's probably the elephant in the room. So can I ask you one more question? And like,
sure.
I don't want to sound like, I don't want this to come out in vain or anything, but like going forward, regardless of who wins the election, what can the people do? Like what power do we have to hold, the state's attorney accountable for stuff like for withholding information from the community in which you serve, where, we voted for you, we elected you. Like, is there any check and balance to that position where it's like, hey, you can't just keep avoiding people's questions like this and then just, punishing people when you feel like it, or not punishing people when you don't feel like it, and just not having to say anything about it?
Well, first of all, I think, the thing I've been working on for the last 18 months while I've been running is to hold this state's attorney accountable.
Right.
And that's, by the way, I got to say this, that's really important, right? Because to some extent, judges are a check. To answer your question a little bit, judges can be a check on the state's attorney. That's like a case at a time. Right. And, some people, I've heard people say that I've been too negative in this campaign and he's got an ad, how he's against negative ads. I'm sorry, the stakes are really high. Like, people's freedom is on the line. People's lives are on the line. So if I am sharper with an opponent than I am in a courtroom, it's because we're not in a courtroom, okay? We're in the democracy, and we got to let people decide this and know the truth. I stand by every ad we've written. I stand by every word we've written because it's all been 100% true. We haven't taken anything out of context. He claims we took a shot out of context. We didn't. I want everybody to see the full interview because we didn't. And so to hold people accountable, you got to have a really engaged electorate. You got to have everybody vote down ballot. Everybody says, well, we can't make a difference. Man, changing state's attorneys is going to make a difference. We haven't had a Democrat in 40 years in Lake County. And it's not so much the party, it's three guys.
Yep.
It's three guys over 40 years. I don't care if they were all Democrats. I don't care if they were all Republicans. I don't care if they were all independents. That's three ridiculous. Guys, they all hired each other.
Right.
Okay. There was never a break. There's never been a break from the past. And I think that's what this campaign represents. So that's one way to hold people accountable. I think we have to demand that our judges be willing to hold state's attorneys accountable. We have to have just more information out there. People have to be willing to say, hey, this happened in a courtroom. I got to say this point because we're talking about accountability. Did you guys know that we don't have court reporters when we're setting bonds in bond court?
Right. We don't.
Right. See? We don't have any court reporters. It's not recorded, and we don't have court reporters. I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about prior to COVID. Prior to COVID and today. This has nothing to do with Zoom. Okay. There are not court reporters or recordings when we are setting bonds. So your question about how are we going to make sure that we have fair bond hearings? I don't know. I don't know when we don't have court reporters. Okay. When I'm state's attorney, we're going to have a court reporter in that courtroom, even if my office has to pay for it. Let me say that again. We are going to have it's not like I'm not a hero. It's not coming out of my pocket. It's going to come out of the budget. But what a simple solution. If I can't get the county board to put be the county board. If I can't get the county board to put a court reporter down there, that's cool. I'll put one down there.
Right.
Because it's just another salaried employee. Okay.
Right.
That's a great example. That's a great example, Nick, of something that I can promise to do and will do. And I say this with all humility. Nobody can stop me. Nobody can stop me from putting a court reporter in that court. What's that?
I said, come on through. He said,
that's awesome.
Nobody can stop that type of thing, because any lawyer can bring a court reporter into a courtroom. So why can't the state's attorney bring a court reporter into the courtroom every day? That's how we're going to keep people accountable, is more transparency, more information. I'm sorry, a tougher press. We need a tougher media, and it's got to be media. It's got to be social media now. It can't just be newspapers and radios, but we got to have getting more information out there. But yeah, I mean, I think having elections for the state's attorney is a really, really important way to have accountability.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And like, you definitely shed a lot of light and shared a lot of information tonight especially myself, to somebody that, isn't aware of all these things all the time. And It sounds like that's kind of the direction that is going in. And that does ultimately make me pretty sad that people can be in these positions and then just choose not to, kind of be open and transparent about what they're kind of doing as far as, their jobs and their duties, and then, still have people going to bat and voting for them and like asking people for their support, and then turning around and kind of, closing the door in our face. So, listen, if anybody out there is listening to this interview, has anything to say, please make sure that you voice your opinion. Let us know how you feel, Eric. I definitely appreciate you coming on, and I love what you're doing. I love the things that you're saying, and I definitely believe that we need that change. And it's just great to hear somebody say it, finally, because you usually get the latter, where it's like you get the kind of railroad answers from people So thank you for just that.
Sure.
Absolutely. And before we get out of here, I got to say, Teresa says, you haven't been negative. It's been the truth. There have been things and cases that were not handled correctly by the current state's attorney's office. It is an issue. My mom says, Cecilia says, as Teresa said, we have had a state's attorney that we cannot talk to freely. They make promises and talk about all these programs to help our young people who are going down the wrong path instead of helping them turn around, just incarcerate them again. That's the issue at hand. And I will say this, there was a time where I was working with some youth, and I heard Mike Neerheim say, that he wanted to have young people be able to come and shadow his office and be able to, come and understand what the state's attorney does and all of that. And, it was great to hear that. However, I just working with the youth, I work with, young people ages 17 to 24. And I see it happen all the time where, they get caught up in something and they just don't know, what they're getting themselves into. And when you don't have anybody that you can really go to and really talk to about these situations, you can say what you want to do for the youth all day. But right now, our youth are really falling by the wayside by the judicial system. And it's unfortunate. So how are we going to fix that? That's something that I feel like needs to be addressed. We need to talk about our youth, because there are cycles going on right now where young people are going to jail younger and they're continuing. They're getting out, they're going back. They're getting out, they're going back. So what are some things that you plan to do for the youth in Lake County?
Yep, we have to end the school to prison pipeline. It's critical, and we have to call it that and say what it is. A few things. First of all, it's a really big deal when somebody who's young gets a criminal conviction on their background that they can't take off, even if it's for a few years. Right. So that needs to be a moment where the prosecution is reflecting, do I really not want this person to be able to get a job? Or am I just trying to get this person anger management? Am I just trying to get this person public service hours to learn a lesson and have a restorative justice moment where this person learns, because being young is different, right? We know the psychology of the brain is different. And
Absolutely.
so we have to be very careful when we are making those decisions about what is on people's records, because information is different today than it was 10, 20 years ago. Right. There are very powerful judges and very powerful attorneys in our county in their 50s and 60s who still don't understand what an expungement is and what an expungement is not, and what is on your record and what is not. Okay. People love to say, oh, well, it's not a conviction, so it's not on your record. Yeah, except that I just looked it up in a computer. So we got to think more about deferred prosecution programs. We don't need to be putting kids in the docket system unnecessarily. We got to really think about that. And we also have to stop. I have to tell you, the current state's attorney's office, they object to expungements that are legal and sealings that are legal constantly. Wow. So let me tell you real quick. There are some cases that can be expunged and sealed, and that there are some that cannot. For example, domestic violence cannot be expunged or sealed. Okay, it is what it is. If somebody files a petition for that, then of course the state's attorney is going to follow the law and say, I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify. That's straightforward. This office objects on cases that do qualify. And they say, well, we just want the judge to know that we don't want this to happen. You qualify for expungement or sealing, but we want to object so that the court hears from us about why the court shouldn't exercise its discretion to do it. Right. Except the law allows for it. I've seen this office object to the sealing and expunging of acquittals. So the person won their trial, okay? Wow. And they can't remove it from their record. And then you get the 60-year-old or 50-year-old judge who says, oh, well, it's an acquittal, so it's not on their record. Except that I just looked it up in a computer. So the idea of a record, there's not some dusty book in Springfield or Washington that's your record, okay? Right. It's just information. Yeah. And so I feel really strongly, that we have to completely overhaul how we look at expunging and sealing. There's automatic expunging and sealing provisions in the cannabis reform, which we saw, which is not happening in our county, which needs to happen.
Awesome.
Because that affects so many young people, and
oh, for sure.
We changed the law about marijuana. So what are we doing? Like, we changed the law. So let's get those cases out.
That's right. And thank you, Teresa. He definitely has a lot of things that he wants to change regarding domestic violence in the victims and things like that. So I'm eager, to see changes in that form as well. So we did touch on that. Eric, thank you so much for coming. We definitely appreciate it. All the things that you have done thus far, we appreciate it. We love seeing you out there. We love seeing you being, a part of this community. We thank you for being so open and so honest and so transparent. We appreciate you for coming rocking with Radical.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to come back. Hey, win or lose, I'll come back. I mean, if you want to hear from me if I lose, but you might want to hear what's going on in the courthouse if I lose. I don't think we're going to lose. Things are going great. I'm feeling a real momentum. Many people have already voted. I urge everybody who's listening to vote all the way down the ballot, and to keep going all the way down. All of those positions matter. With early voting and with mail-in voting, you have a little more time to Google everybody. So take advantage of that. Inform yourself about both sides and vote. And I think things are going to go well. We're not overconfident. We're working every day like we're behind. We work the phones every night, and I'm out doing stuff every day and every night. And we've got 8 more days to go. But if everybody comes out and vote, and frankly, if some young people vote that nobody's counting on voting, we're gonna have real change in Lake County.
There we go.
Absolutely, guys. We got 8 more days until it is voting day. So we ask that you guys go out and vote. Once again, Mr. Rhinehart came through, and he was very humble, very transparent, very open and honest. You don't get that very often, so I appreciate him for coming and being as transparent as he was. This was an awesome time. We thank you for coming.
Well, thanks again, and I'll come back anytime.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks. Yes, I would require. Yes, I would require diversity training. I saw a question come up.
Yep, that was
We gotta multiply it. We gotta
don't go nowhere. So
we gotta multiply it. Yeah, they're not doing enough of it in the current office, and there aren't enough lawyers of color in the office. There are only 2 African American lawyers and 2 Latino lawyers out of 61. That's stunning to me. That's a scandal in and of itself, and it's got to change.
Gotcha. Hey, y'all rocking with Radical Radio. This is Eric Rhinehart, candidate for Lake County State's Attorney. We thank you guys for coming on. Just give us a second. All right, there we go.
Real quick, before we jump off of here, thank you everybody that tuned in. Do us a favor. Definitely share this post, share this video, share this live, share this interview. We got 8 days left to go out there and vote. So make sure y'all get out there, do your thing, share this video. Let us know how you feel. Follow us on Facebook, man. Go ahead, hit the Radical Radio page. Give us a follow. Let us know how you feel. Leave us some feedback. You know what I'm saying? And if you would like to be on Radical Radio, if you want to be on the show, if you want to be the person getting grilled by Lotion and Coach L, come on with it. Send us an email. We would love to have you on our show. We're open, we're honest, we're transparent. We're trying to be bold and unapologetic about it. So
there you go.
Please do us a favor. Email us if you would like to be on the show. We would love to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys again. We love you guys. Good night.